Now, it's the hammer blow that, according to Atiku Abubakar, presidential candidate of the main opposition People's Democratic Party, will knock the Nigerian economy into shape and help the country lay claim to African economic superpower status. Mr. Abubakar has released his blueprint for a modernized, rejigged, radically improved Nigerian economy that will strengthen agriculture and manufacturing, inspire the kind of confidence that will attract huge amounts of foreign direct investment and double GDP by 2030. He talked about more clarity, coherence and consistency in policy, and about declaring a state of emergency in the power sector. He said he'd put in place a stable exchange rate, lower interest rates and make credit available. Take a listen to some of what he had to say.
Creating economic opportunities for Nigerians will represent significant implications for social cohesion and national security. Increased jobs and income opportunities will reduce the likelihood of our youth being involved in crime, violence, and conflict, motivated by manipulating religious, ethnic, or regional differences. Economic prosperity is an integral part of my 5-point agenda, soon to be officially unveiled, that seeks to restore Nigeria's unity. 1, strengthen national security. 2, foster economic prosperity. 3, improve education. 4, delivery and restructure the policy. 5. Indeed, economic prosperity is the thread that runs through the other critical elements of the agenda. Today, I will speak on the strategic steps I will take to build or to rebuild the economy of our dreams and foster boundless prosperity for all Nigerians. Let me therefore crave your indulgence to ask, so where is the Nigerian economy today? It is important to first understand where we are, because policy prescriptions must always be preceded by diagnosis.
That's the presidential candidate of the main opposition People's Democratic Party, the PDP, Atiku Abubakar. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the spokesman for the Atiku presidential campaign, the lawyer Daniel Bwala, and by the international economist and political and business analyst and CEO at Business Africa Events Limited, Christian Udechukwu. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And let me start with you, Daniel. We saw Atiku Abubakar, the PDP presidential candidate, right there, laying out his economic agenda today. And central to that was private sector development. Explain that economic agenda and his economic priorities to us briefly.
Well, thank you for having me, and good evening to Nigerians. I was physically not there at the event, but this is part of what we have been brooding and thinking through for some times now. And the premise for the engagement around the private sector participation hinged from the belief that, not just belief, starts that national spending, in Nigeria from the public sector is about, I think, 8 point something, while the private sector is about 78 point something. So in other words, the private sector is a critical part of economic development. But there are 3 basic concepts that anytime we talk about economic development or economic problem in Nigeria, people always think about. Because we don't have finances, we have borrowed to a point where it is said that the first 3 years of the next administration, the administration will be burdened with the responsibility of paying 27.7 trillion. So the question that comes to mind is, any government that wins the election next year, how are you going to raise the funds?
Absolutely.
How are you going to deal with infrastructure, for example? And how are you going to deal with power? Because power is also a critical part of infrastructure. Now, with respect to infrastructure, what I believe is the takeaway from it is that he is proposing the introduction of what he calls infrastructure debt fund. It is going to be a fund comprising of the private sector firms, little bit of government intervention, where he said there will be an initial $20 billion. He's also proposing that from the public sector perspective, that he's going to create what he calls public infrastructure development unit or something in the office of the presidency, so that the presidency will spearhead. Right, so that the presidency will spearhead interaction with the MDS to ensure that there is a seamless participation or collaboration between the public sector in allowing the private sector to boost the economy. With respect to power, he's proposing two things. One, in the short term, he's talking about what he calls something power intervention. I can't quite rightly place the name.
Well, he talked about the possibility of declaring a state of emergency.
That's the foundation
in the power sector.
Right. So that's the foundation. Then he will introduce emergency power fund, where the federal government will make some intervention in some areas by adding to power production. But in the meantime, he's proposing a legislative framework that will probably what we call in law as amendment of the Constitution, that will tamper with this basic thing we call the exclusive list, where the federal government is the one in charge of power. He is proposing a procedure or process whereby the states will be allowed with the full power.
Yes, he did talk about that. And that's a form of restructuring, isn't it? It's the start of it. Let me come to you, Chris Udechukwu, because you are an international economist. You are the objective arbiter here, if I might say so. Did he inspire confidence in you? You watched him delivering his speech earlier today. Are you impressed with his plan and this focus on the private sector as the engine of development? Because his plan basically is for the government to support the private sector, and that's how he intends to drive growth.
Well, Charles, thank you for having me on the program. I think that the presidential ambitions, the economic ambitions of the PDP presidential candidate as unveiled is impressive in terms of the fact that it dares to think about restructuring the economy constitutionally, but it doesn't go far enough. It's not sufficiently radical, and it's not as deeply rooted in evidence as should be. It's very easy when speeches are written to have a lot of the national statistics thrown in and all, but it's important to have ideas around which people can rally around. It talks about a very warm handshake with the private sector, which is very good. I mean, that has quite a lot of connotations and implications economically for the private sector. It means there's going to be close contact and perhaps open door policy, if you like. But the promise is not sufficiently ambitious. There's a lot of problem that the private sector has. The ports are heavily congested. People can not bring in the technology or the equipment that they need with the ease and the confidence and the speed that is required. Nigeria has one major port in Lagos, major port center, which is Lagos, Tinkan, Apapa and all that. But you have a whole long stretch of ships waiting to berth and coming, and the cost of clearing those goods, the time it takes for demurrage and all that, are some of the things that you would expect some sort of radical policy initiatives on. Details that matter to entrepreneurs. You have access to capital is not what it should be. The cost of borrowing is excessively high.
Yes, although in fairness to him, he did talk about making credit available, but in agreeing with you, he has not expanded on that.
Yes, and on the agriculture side as well, because he said one of the things that will be a priority to him is he will make farmers the priority and agriculture will be a priority.
Yeah, manufacturing as well.
Manufacturing as well, yes. But the problem is that as a presidential candidate, you have to be able to, because that's in line with what we've had for so many decades. You have to be able to set firm targets, big ambitious targets. I mean, we have about over 70 million hectares of arable land for cultivation, and just about 2.5% of that, according to the president, is being cultivated. So, we need to be able to have a huge target, say maybe I don't know. It's not out of the way to say maybe 30% of that should be cultivated in Nigeria under his leadership, or any other leader who comes in and has such an ambition, because we have the land. And if you had people sitting on a tractor driving from here to Kaduna, maybe beyond into Kano, they could do that in a day and back. And if you had that consistently in about 3 months, people should be able to have 100 naira in their pocket and feed properly and eat beef, chicken, food, whatever it is they want to eat with 100 naira. It's a shame that China is able to feed 1.4 billion people and 200 million people in Nigeria are not able to be catered for. Many people, millions of people go to bed in Nigeria hungry. Anybody who wants to be president of Nigeria should be sufficiently impatient with development that you set goals that will keep people awake at night. And that's what we need now.
Right, okay. That's a very, very good point. And I'm going to bring you in, Daniel, because it's your right to respond to that. But in balancing this discussion, Mr. Atiku talked about more clarity, coherence, and consistency in policy, which is partly what he's talking about. But he didn't clarify that. And one expects that as the campaigns begin, we'll see more evidence and more sort of more of his ideas coming through.
That is exactly what I wanted to say in reaction to what Doctor said. There is no way you can, in one sitting and in a program of few minutes, talk about everything in terms of the economy that you want to do. Just the mere concept of a warm handshake with the private sector entails that you are going to give attention to private sector participation in the economy. Part of what he has just talked about now are the concerns of not just Nigerians, but the private sector. So whether you look at the port, whether you look at the agricultural sector, because he also talked about agricultural sector. That CCC you talked about is what is the problem of this government. Incoherent policies, not clearly defined policies.
Policy flip-flops,
policy
to use a cliche.
So
basically.
that's why investors cannot predict whether Nigerian climate is conducive for investment.
Absolutely.
But what Atiku Abubakar said today is clearly, it's like laying the foundation, the vision of what you intend to do. And by the way, Atiku did not talk to his, what is it called, the manifesto, because elections, the whistle for election has not been,
the campaign
has not been blown yet. But we have a manifesto, we have the details of each and
so
every
you've thought
of the elements
it through, basically.
Correct.
So he's literally bringing it out in bite-sized pieces.
But most importantly, and which is why I appreciate the fact of Doctor here, is that Atiku is still open to criticism, constructive criticism, because by himself he's not an economist. He's a leader who is to provide a vision, and then to then harness brains like Doctor and many of his kinds in the private sector to see what they have to say about what we say we are going to do. And manifestos are always improved upon. Even government always improve upon policies. But the most important thing is that we have identified the problem. There is financing problem. There is infrastructural deficit in Nigeria. And for you to match the gap, recommended infrastructure deficit in Nigeria, you need on an average $100 billion.
Right.
The budget of Nigeria every year is 30. So you have about 3 years plus budget to match just the requirement for a year's infrastructure.
But to be fair, Daniel, I mean, the issue in Nigeria has never been about identifying problems. I mean, if you go down any street in Nigeria, you don't need qualifications. The people feel the problems. They have, to use a term, an epistemological privilege of knowing the problems because they're going through them. Let me bring you in, Chris. He talked about declaring a state of emergency in the power sector, and obviously that's key to development, and you know, he said he would give the states the power to generate and distribute electricity for themselves. But I mean, the government he was part of for 8 years, they didn't do that, did they?
No, they didn't do that because there was a fundamental problem in the policy direction for the power sector at the time. And they made the strategic error of allowing those who were responsible for doing the catalog shopping for the electricity sector at the time to leave the offices, the strategic offices that they held, doing a very nationally vital assignment for the country to go run for offices. And so we ended up with perhaps close to 1,000 containers that arrived, and nobody knew where they were supposed to be going because the people who ordered them, I like this one, I like that one on the computer and catalogs, were not there to direct where they were supposed to be going. So we lost an opportunity when, in actual fact, if you had $16 billion and you walked into the White House and you had a meeting with the president and you said, Mr. President, I have $5 billion here. I'd like you to give me Westinghouse to match the same fund. And I need about 20,000 megawatts of whatever source of energy you require from them. And I'd like that to be delivered in 2 years. Do you think this is possible? Because we have a national priority that requires us to meet this target. He will take the $5 billion and set the goal for the US companies, and they'll deploy people to ensure that you had that. And if you repeated the same thing with the UK, France, and perhaps Germany for the 16 billion that we had, and there is no reason why we should be talking about 5,000 and all now. We should have about 30, 40,000 megawatts of power, and we will have a 24-hour power supply in Nigeria. Now, so the fact that he is willing to take that off the exclusive list and onto the concurrent list is a significant development. In fact, those who run the discos and the gencos that are not doing very much will be very worried now, because if they invest sufficiently, they might be able to still protect the territories that they control. But if they don't, they'll have stiff competition to contend with. And it's important to have competition, because that's the only way you're going to drive prices down. Absolutely. Now, the other thing that also is a priority that he didn't speak to very clearly is the matter of security. It's not a matter that should be speculated about.
Yes, that's a good point.
It's a matter that anybody who is a presidential candidate must speak very bluntly and directly about, okay? Because it's quibbling about security that has created the mess that Nigeria is in today. When you're a leader, the things you care about get done. The things you quibble about, everybody ignores.
And the honest truth is that security is a fundamental part of economy.
Correct.
I mean, you can't separate the two, correct, can you? Let me come to you, Dan, because Daniel, pushing that reformist economic agenda, impressive as it may sound, through, will of course depend on if he wins the election in 2023. How is it looking so far for him in the face of the challenge of the APC and the Labour Party, as well as the NNPP?
Right. So I will react to that, but if you permit me just a few seconds to talk about
briefly,
security.
because we're almost out of time.
He actually addressed the issue of security, but not in this event, because those who have had the pleasure or privilege of looking at my vision with the Nigerian people, he talked about the key component of his, of course, proposal for security reform in Nigeria is one, creation of state police. He talked about increasing the manpower of police and the army. But he went beyond that to talk about affecting areas of the economy that will give Nigerians from every part of Nigeria a sense of belonging, because some of the restiveness, insecurity is occasioned by the fact that some people in this country don't believe they are part of the country or that they can achieve the Nigerian dream within the framework of Nigeria. So it's a comprehensive plan, dealing, while you're looking at the coercive part of government intervention, you also look at the non-coercive part, so you can integrate the people. With respect to Labour Party,
in fairness to him, he mentioned that today. Actually. He mentioned briefly that the economic thread is what runs through security and all the rest of it.
Correct. So we are not threatened by the emergence of Labour Party. As a matter of fact, I just got off an interview where I kept saying, I've been saying that, and it bears repeating, that I am not harsh with Peter Obi, because I believe Peter Obi, we have shared ideology. Peter Obi is someone who believes in capital, a free market economy. Unfortunately, he found himself in a political party that are against free market economy. So if he becomes president, it will be up to 3 months before they will have that problem. But fundamentally, Peter Obi does not have the infrastructure to win election. In Nigeria, if you will win election, you have to score the highest vote cast, and you have to also have 25% in at least 24 states. He doesn't appear to have that.
But the honest truth is that no one appears to have that at the moment. Never mind the calculations and so on, because you're banking on the fact that you'll get the momentum to coast to victory on a majority. And, but all the predictions, all the calculations, the arithmetic suggests that we're in uncharted territory that could force coalitions and compromises in order to secure power. I wonder what you think of that before we have to go.
Well, Charles, the truth is that everything is still up in the air. And why is it up in the air? Well, because almost every leading political party in Nigeria has internal issues, and not just that they have internal issues, they have very clearly not been able to articulate, solutions that address the heartfelt concern of many Nigerians. I mean, increasingly in the country, it's difficult for anybody to travel by land, by road, by air, and even on the waters. So, so until you begin to have people address those issues and make access to transportation by whatever means affordable and accessible, you cannot meaningfully begin to talk about anybody winning or losing. 24 hours is a long time in politics. So.
Absolutely. Sure. Well, on that note, I want to say, gentlemen, a very, very brilliant, enlightening discussion. Christian Udechukwu is, of course, international economist, political and business analyst, and CEO at Business Africa Events Limited. And Daniel Bwala is a lawyer and spokesman for the Atiku presidential campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you.